Call the meeting. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Briggs, President of All Head Association. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks to the new members. New members who purchased property here on the island in the past. From a personal point of view, the first time I came to one of these meetings, I think I've been here 2 or 3 years, but I came to one of the meetings and learned more about Bald Head Island, but all the reports of everyone in it puts the island all together. So I hope you enjoy it. First, I'd like to thank the village of Bald Head Island for allowing us to meet today in the public safety building, since the association center's repairs are not yet complete. We appreciate their accommodating us today. Special thanks to village manager Chris McCall, Chief Josh Gibson, Public Information Officer, and I making today's meeting go smooth. We have BHA members who are joining us today via Zoom webinar, and we're recording this meeting to be uploaded to our YouTube channel later today. We'll also put all of the presentations you'll see today on our website by early next week. And of course, I'll ask you to silence your phone because I better pull it on. We can figure out how to do it. Now go to slide 3 if you would please. First thing I'd like to do this morning is introduce my fellow board members. And I seem to move back and forth between this. Down on the screen, Gary will speed up on me if I don't read things carefully. So if my voice, if you can't hear it, please raise your hand and I'll just get a little closer to this so you can. I'm not quite sure how close I have to be. But the first thing I'd like to do this morning is introduce my fellow board members. You may know some of them or all of them, but I wanted to recognize each of them and acknowledge the hard work they've done this year on behalf of BHA's property owners. We spent the last year engaged in thoughtful discussion and debates, and I personally appreciate that each of them has demonstrated a willingness to make the hard decisions necessary to help sustain Bald Head Island for the foreseeable future. Sitting next to me on my right, we had Christine Osborne in this pretty sweater, love the color. And then we have Robert Drumheller, also in a very colorful sweater. Notice it's green. Yes, who are treasurers too. Robert, we have John Kenny, Mr. Plaid, and Quiet Man on the end. He is the assistant treasurer, Paul Carey, guards on Monday as well. Joe Bonner is ill today and couldn't join us, but he sends his regards to everyone. Slide 4, please. Next, I'd like to introduce the BHA staff who is with us today. Carrie Moffett, our outstanding executive director. Mary Ann Arata, also our outstanding deputy director. All of the rest are outstanding too, but I'll do it. Diane Saris, our administrative assistant.
That's at the office.
She is back at the office work. And then Fran Pagliaro, our architectural review coordinator. Where is Fran? There's Fran hiding over there. And then Pam Hansen, our communications manager. And Leanne Fink, our bookkeeper. Where's Leanne? She's outside. And then Pam Rainey, our customer relations associate. There's Pam back there. And that's pretty swift. And then Chris Howard is not here, but Bill as well. And Kim Bandera, our art specialist,
She's at the front door.
she is at the front door. And Dora Ritchie is here today
Also at the office.
at the office. Thank you to the staff for coming in on a Saturday, which is a regular day off. I hope that you had a chance to engage with members of our staff. We have a tremendously talented team of individuals who all work hard to meet high customer service standards. They're dedicated to our members and to both our lives. You'll hear a lot of information today, and we can almost guarantee you'll learn something new. Our most important job today is to fill 2 vacancies on our board of directors. Let's get started. I'm going to ask Robert Drumheller, BHA Secretary and Treasurer, to let us know whether we have a quorum. Robert, you can change around.
We do this every year, so I'm just going to read the slide that talks about the quorum provisions. For Article 3, Section 4 of the bylaw, annual meetings and all special meetings, the presence of 150 members entitled to cast or of proxies entitled to cast votes shall constitute a quorum for any action except as otherwise provided in the articles of incorporation, the declarations, or these bylaws. So as of late last night, we currently have 491 proxies in hand, which represents 620 votes, more than satisfying the minimum quorum requirement. These proxies in hand represent 26% of our membership participation. Thank you.
Robert? Slide 6 is approval of the minutes. One of the things that our staff has done this year is to take particular care in the preparation of the minutes. They do an outstanding job of taking care of our minute book for all of the meetings and also for the annual meeting. So now we have the opportunity to approve the minutes for the annual meeting from last year. You probably all remember them well, but they were posted on the website. I'm sure you've read them, and we're happy to read them again for you now. If you like.
Move approval.
There's a second. And there's a second, so we have a motion made. And now all in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It passes. It was close. It passed. Now, next we go to the nominating committee. And Joe Bronner, who was chair of this year's nominating committee, couldn't be here today, so I have the pleasure of taking the work of the nominating committee this year, talking about the work of the nominating committee this year. And introducing the 2024 Board of Candidates. Slide 7. We have them now. Section 5 and 11 of the BHA bylaws. Let me just tell you, we have articles of incorporation, we have covenants, we have bylaws, and that's just the beginning of the. This is a lawyer's delight. But section 5 and 11 of the bylaws guide the process for nominating. We follow the same process every year. We did this year. We asked BHA members multiple times for both the Island Report and the Compass, our 2 main communication vehicles, to consider serving on the nominating committee. This year's nominating committee members were Rick Nelson, Robbie Nixon, Claude Pope, and Kirby Ward. Mike Skavinsky also volunteered for the committee. And we are thankful to all of them for their willingness to serve on the committee, and we appreciate the time they gave for this important job. After the committee was set, we used the Island report and a compass again to ask you to reach out to Joe. 4 people volunteered to run for the board. After meeting a couple of times with the names of those interested in winning, the nominating committee put forward for the membership everyone who volunteered to run. Later in the year, we had one property owner who self-nominated, and through that process, described in the bylaws, he was also put on the ballot for consideration by the membership. I want to pause here just to stress the point that the BHA Board of Directors' only involvement in this entire process is to approve the nominating committee members at the beginning of the year. The committee deliberates and determines the number of candidates it wants to put forth for the membership to consider, and simply informs the board of the candidates at its regular September meeting each year. Slide 8. Let me now introduce the board candidates, and we'll have received from Harry and the annual review. And in the annual review, there was a detailed resume from each of these outstanding candidates. And I'm sure you read those. Now my opportunity to read them to you again, or I can just identify them by name if you remember their credentials. Because they're a good group and very interesting, and the variety we get to run for the board and serve on the board is really helpful for our overall island. I will just state the names. Michael Bummarch, Bonner Heider, Chris Parrish, Betty Robinson, and Steve Smalley. So thank you to all 5 of you for running for the board. We appreciate it. Now, let me go to the next slide. This is all for the election. Proxies were received prior to the meeting. So let's get to the voting. We have 2 people helping us with the voting today. Members of our teller committee, Diane Maceras and Lori Jelinek. Diane is manning the office back at the association and is awaiting the ballots that are filled out today. Once the ballots are collected by Lori today, they'll be placed in a sealed envelope, count up all the votes on the proxies and the ballots. Lori will bring back to us a sealed envelope with the results of today's election that I will announce at the end of our meeting. That is what we do for this. Raise your hand now if you need a ballot. And now, being passed out to you. Once you get a ballot, you'll take your hand down and we'll then see how many hands from it. It has to be a right, it can't be a left. Still a hand over here. Well, there's still one there. One. Is there anyone who has not yet received a ballot that wants a ballot? For those of you who are new to BHA's voting process, there are some procedural rules you should be aware of. Because we have instructions for those of you who are in the room here, and also slightly different instructions for members connecting remotely. Proxies were mailed out to members in mid-December, along with their annual package. The online voting also began on December 27th and is available through January 24th. If you sent in your proxy to the BHA office or voted online, your vote has already been counted. You don't need to do anything further. If you send in your proxy or voted online and change your mind, you'll need to vote the proxy. Then you vote using a ballot today. If you are voting on behalf of someone else and have their proxy, please give the proxy to Lori. And you are asked to complete a ballot today. If you are voting today for yourself, you must vote using a ballot. For those of you online, these instructions are for you. Voting via the online voting system, I Vote Now, is available from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. only. The automated voting system will close promptly at 10. If you don't have your unique registration ID number, it was mailed to you in the annual report, call her at 910-457-4676, extension 21, or send an email to her, Diane@baldheadassociation.com. You can get your paper ballot one or two ways. You can visit our website, baldheadassociation.com. You download the paper ballot and send it into the office. Instructions are included in the download. Or two, you can request a ballot from Diane by calling her at 910-457-4676, extension 21, or email the request to her, Diane@baldheadassociation.com. Either way, we'll need to have your ballot back in the office by 10 a.m. in order to be counted. Okay? Anyone else need a ballot? Questions or a ballot? With all that said, we do. Now time to be elected. I declare the election closed. Let's go now to slides 10.
Go ahead and collect the ballots now.
Pardon?
I'm gonna collect the ballots now, so.
Oh, you have.
Yeah, no, we're waiting for you to close the election, so. If you have a ballot for me to, pick up, please. Hand them to me. Thank you. Anyone else here? Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay. Any other ballots? Okay, Alan, I'll be back.
Okay.
Put these in the envelope now. Gonna seal that, so you're done. And I will be back.
Thanks very much, Lori.
Thank you. Okay.
Let's go to slide 10. Our teller committee is counting votes. The board and I are going to talk about, then we're going to hear from other island entities about some of the work done over 2023 and what they may be planning on the horizon. Today, Bald Head Association has 1,886 member rooftops or homes and 667 vacant lots. We've seen a great deal of construction around the island this last couple of years, and evidence of the new homes that have been built. 5 of the properties were converted from lots to homes in 2023. As they received their certificate of occupancy from the village of Bald Head Island. Another interesting note is that 183 properties changed owners in 2020. About 10% of our properties. We'll hear more about that in another minute. Slide 11. But you might like to see how the island properties and their owners have changed in the last decade. Since 2014, 125 new homes have been added to the ranks. Might point out that just over 2/3 since COVID began in 2020. Also, since 2014, just over 1,500 now member properties have seen new owners. I'll read that sentence again. I think it's very significant when Gary gave us. Since 2014, just over 1,500 now member properties have seen new owners. While the uptick began in 2019, in the height of COVID, 2021, 273 properties changed hands. As you can see, we have a lot of new members, new neighbors for all of us to get to know. Slides 12 and 13. His background for any new member association does and how we serve our members according to our governing documents. The article of the corporations and the covenants. And as I mentioned earlier, those are the two most significant documents. First slide, slide 12 is articles of incorporation. And there's outline there. Let me just, I'd like to read to you. This is what the articles of incorporation actually say. It's very brief, but it's significant. This was in 1982, April 21, 1982. It's why we were formed. This is the purpose of the association. The specific purposes for which it is formed are to provide for beautification, maintenance, preservation, and architectural control of the exterior of the single-family homes, multifamily units, and non-residential areas, the residence lots, accessible properties, and common areas, and to promote the health, safety, and welfare of residents within the above described properties, and any additions there too. That's it. That's why we're reformed, and our responsibilities are spelled out in these articles and in the covenants. Go to the next slide for the covenants. Again, these are very significant. We read these throughout the year to focus on, are we in fact asked to do something? Is this within what we are elected to do? Act on such matters as the board determines affects the welfare and recreation of its members, and the beautification and conservation of the natural environment of the properties. To communicate the actions, decisions, and activities of the association, and all of that island events. To provide such services and facilities to its members that the board determines will promote the welfare and recreation of its members, beautification and conservation of the natural environment of the properties. For ownership, management, maintenance, operation, and control of the common areas. For enforcement of this declaration, the articles, bylaws, and rules and regulations, and for achieving and enforcing the architectural, or administering and enforcing the architectural design guidelines. Those are what the covenants say. We'll now go on and kind of explain in some detail the committees we have that have this responsibility and what they have to do. As you know, we have 7 primary committees. One of them is the Architectural Review Committee. And there are 18 members on that committee and staff that supports them. In addition, we have 2 liaison members from the board who work with that committee, serve as a liaison between the board and the committees. And that's Robert, John Kenning, and Christine Osborne. John and Christine will now talk with you about architectural review committee.
Thanks, Alan. So a little background on the ARC. We all came to Bald Head because it looks a certain way and, you know, it's has a that attractive. So the point of the ARC is to maintain that look that brought us here in the first place, which also helps us maintain our property values. You can see on the background, the ARC administers and enforces the guidelines. It facilitates review of owner submissions, and those run the gamut from, you know, new construction to minor renovations, and promote the beautification and conservation of the environment of properties. And importantly, the ARC maintains records of every house that has been built or any change or paint color, that kind of thing, which is very good to know what you have now. You can go there and they have those records. Next slide. Okay, every year it seems for the last 5-6 years, we set a new record. So this year we had 406 applications and we reviewed 366 of those at 22 meetings. So that averages out to 17 submissions reviewed per meeting, which fortunately we have a couple of good ARC chairs who run the meetings efficiently and effectively, and we managed to cut it back from quite long. We've had 5-hour meetings and a lot less than that. You can see we did interim reviews. We did 21 interim reviews between meetings. We had draft, preliminary, and final applications. And we also had minor things like paint and roof applications. And we have an 84% approval rate. So I will talk about this a little bit more later, but we transitioned to an electronic application process, which has streamlined our processing of applications significantly. We had modifications to the design guidelines. Every year we do some modifications to the guidelines. This year we did some major things. We took out some big chunks and reduced the length of the guidelines significantly, and I'll talk about that. And we created physical and digital checklists for the builders, so they know what it is they have to do to have a complete application exactly in a bullet format, and that has been very helpful to them. And next slide. In addition to processing applications, we get things like people will call and say, hey, I've got a tree that's leaning against my house, or a dead tree in my yard, whatever. We process those requests for tree removals. We also manage the 3 drip line communities. BHA manages those, and Kim takes care of most. We also implemented some non-residential design guidelines because, strange as it seems, we have covenants that run with the deed that are subject, or there are, therefore BHA has some responsibility for ensuring that the construction on these properties falls under our guidelines. We have a new administrative assistant, Chris Howard, who does a great job. one thing that a lot of people don't know is, Diane Massaras sits in the office most times, most of the day she's there. And we get a tremendous number of people who just walk in and have a question. And it averages out to about 9 a day, and it's more in the summer. Some days it's just a constant stream of people coming in and asking for help or asking questions. So that's a significant activity at the BHA office. Next slide, please. So the ad hoc committee, this grew out of a meeting with Peter Quinn about 2 years ago. Basically a request, because as we've had this explosion in the number of applications, we were, struggling a little bit to get through all that. And so we took some actions immediately, but then we formed this committee to see what else we could do to improve the process. One of the things that we did was we reduced the length of the guidelines, because a lot of the stuff that was in there, frankly, was a copy of another document. Back in the days before you could have links and documents, they just copied an entire document and put it into the guidelines. So we took that out, we inserted a link, we streamlined some other things, we clarified language about, and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but the 50% rule on houses, that are close to beach, to make that clear where they apply. We set up a regular meeting between the chairs of the ARCA and ARCB to ensure that we're consistent in the way we put in place this online submission process for applications, which has been a big help. We reached out to architects on the island and said, what can we improve? And frankly, some of that feedback is processing. We got some really good feedback from architects on the island. So you can review, but a lot of improvement, and it has definitely streamlined the process for us. Next slide. So these are the numbers that I alluded to earlier. 366 applications last year, the most ever. It just keeps getting bigger. The new construction was 93. New construction applications obviously take the longest to process, or the most effort to process anyway, because you're looking at the whole house. And then you have major renovations, which are close behind, and minors, which, are usually pretty fast, paint, roof, and up. At this point, I will hand it over to Christine, who will continue the ARC slides.
John, good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about ARC and the site management. A little bit about Kim Bandera. She was hired as our ARC specialist in early 2022, and she hit the ground running. Among Kim's responsibilities are the final inspections for new constructions. She's done a terrific job this year getting the backlog of final inspections completed, a lot to our members. When a home, whether it be new construction, a major, a minor, paint, roof, or other, Kim performs site visits at times, multiple times. This past year, 41 projects were inspected, with 33 inspections being completed. 4 projects were unable to be inspected. We were able to return $164,000 in deposits to our members. In 2023, 49 sites were visited, with the required 3 visits per pre-construction sites. Also, in 2023, we had 86 miscellaneous or re-inspections. All right, next slide. This last slide here shows the work that Kim has done with our partners at the Middle Island POA and the Harbor Association. We have great relationships with both of them and have separate contracts with each of them to help facilitate their respective architectural review process. Kim works closely with these two HOAs and as part of the contract, in exchange for expertise and assistance, we retain the review fees. In 2023, Kim assisted Middle Island with 11 new constructions, 1 major, 12 minors, 2 landscapes, and 5 expansions for a total of 31 projects. 4 projects were inspected, completed with deposits totaling $40,000 being returned to the members. The harbor had 8 new construction reviews, 2 majors, 5 minors, 2 landscapes, and 4 paint changes for a total of 21. So in addition to the 406 submittals our ARC staff reviewed, the staff has conducted an additional 52 reviews for the Middle Islands ARC and the harbor's architectural review board. And some, it was an incredibly busy year.
Thank you, John and Christine. Let me now then go to the bit of background with regard to the common areas. In addition to the homeowners, to the homes, the BHA has responsibility for the common areas. First question. Common areas. Let me start with the map up now. Background. Starting with the purple common area, mostly around the golf course on the west end. It's the colors that sort of identify which are the common areas. First map we're looking at is the overall island itself. And the west end and east end. West end, purple on areas mostly around the golf course on the west end. And the east end map shows the common area around the 3 drip line communities with advantage. East end map also shows the alleys that are responsible to maintain the pier station. Next slide, please, slide 25. Both of those maps, 3 maps, and now for the background for recreation services facilities, let me turn it over to Christine.
So as we all know, the Association Center experienced a flood on the ground floor November 10th. Our staff bid out the job to 4 construction companies and the board selected Richco Builders to oversee the project. Work has begun and completion is expected sometime in March, in time for our first ride of the year. We're really excited for our members to see the updated look. In 2023, January through November, our association facilitated 292 events, water activities. What else do we do? We manage improved common areas for member use. We also lease common area to the Village of Bald Head Island to house the mulch site and the dog park, both located on cost educational and recreational activities for our members through ERC, the Education and Recreation Committee. Karen?
I don't think we'll talk about it today. Good morning, everybody. The next slide talks about our communications effort, and that is one thing that we do put a lot of time and effort into. This is communicating to our members. I let Alan introduce Pam Henson. She really drives most of our communication. I signed up for the Compass, which is the I'll say pretty weekly email blast that comes out. If you haven't signed up for that, please go to our website and there's Pam has a link there so you can get that information that is specific to BHA conference. So in 2023, there's a long list of things that we did over the course of the year. We surveyed our members, in particular looking at the island report to make sure what we're doing with it makes sense. The format, the frequency, advertisers, and other on-island entities who also publish information in that. We have sent out 52 Compass emails. I hope all of you got those. We also had multiple informational meetings. We had one specifically about with BHA Transportation, about their move to the electronic reservation and ticketing system. We had one with the village council candidates, and we had one with our own BHA board candidates later in the year. We also had one insurance informational session as well. We constantly, in the information that comes up regarding the Utilities Commission updates, and puts all of that information on our website, so it's easy for you guys to see. Maybe not always to read and understand, because it's a lot of legal stuff, but it is there for your information to read if you'd like. We also have a Facebook page as well, if you'd like to like that and post that information. Next slide, please. And then this sort of an extension of that is also promoting the health and safety and welfare. We sort of look at those two charges together. So some of it, there's a little bit of repeat, some of these things. I wanted to just bring to your attention the Bald Head Island Basics. If you haven't seen that, we have copies here in the office. It's also available on our website. Something that Pam put together that has a lot of information for you as owners, but also is really helpful for your guests or your renters. If you'd like, you can get multiple copies of it. If you just call the office, we'll be glad to send it to you.
Thank you, Carrie. The next slide, the covenants enforcement. That is the process of when there is a violation of responsible for that. And the board becomes involved, in which if there's a violation hearing. Enforcement of the covenants helps maintain property values. 2023 violations, there were 30 total. Unauthorized work done outside of our approval process, but you know everything we do when working on our homes has to be approved first by the arch. Unauthorized tree trimmings, exterior lighting violations, messy construction sites, final inspections, commercial use of residential properties. 23 community-wide standards violations. 22 total of those. Talk more about the community-wide standards when we get to the committee, but there were 22 violations. Annual evaluations of BHA managed neighborhoods. Again, a significant responsibility we have, and that's what required years ago with connection with the virtue. 2018 between stage 1 and stage 2. That's the Summers Crescent, Keeper's Landing, valuations of the place there in Surgeon's Wall. Now, the Architectural Review Committee. And let me ask John and Christine to guide us on them.
Okay, thanks, Alan. The Architectural Review Committee is divided in two sections, just to kind of split the load, but they are also geographically divided. Section A is covers sort of the east end of the island from Muscadine over. Sorry, other way around. A covers the west end from the river to Muscadine. B covers Muscadine to every month except January. So we have 22 meetings a year. And again, it addresses what area that they deal with there. Section B, frankly, is a little bit complicated because it covers all of the communities that have special, I guess, guidelines that apply only to them. And that's a link. The next slide, please. I'd like to say thanks to every member who volunteers on ARC because this is it's a big job. We have a great group of volunteers. We have multiple architects who are either serving on the committee or are consultants. And it's just, there's a wealth of experience among these people. So, and anyone who would be interested in volunteering, we have forms for you. And next, I think, is Robert with finance.
Thanks, John. So I've been the chair of the finance committee for 8 years, final year. And I just wanted to say that the committee for 2023 was the largest and the most engaged by far in all the 8 years I've been doing it. Last year, Paul, Gary, the treasurer, and the official liaison for the committee. So Paul just make a couple of comments about the committee and their level of engagement. Paul.
Thanks, Robert. Well, first of all, I've been here 22 years, over 22 years. And Alan, thank you. No one's ever called me the quiet man. Yeah, one of the things we tried to do this year, one of the easiest things to do anywhere, especially around the island, is complain about that, not do anything. And I think we encourage folks to go out there. I'm sorry, can't hear me. We encourage people, especially on the finance committee, to volunteer for the finance committee, and because of their interest in getting involved, we also look more active in having a meeting. So I think that was helpful, Robert. There are a number of issues that were due, occasionally contentious, but at the end of the year, I think very positive.
Yeah.
New ideas on how to look at things. Some people who thought things were done one way understand the logic of how they were being done. So I think it was really a good year,
Yeah.
positive year.
The only other thing I would say is a number of the recommendations that were made were incorporated in as we developed the budget. So we got a lot of good feedback. Okay. I'm done.
All right, next we go to the Resource Conservation and Beautification Committee. John?
Thanks, Alan. The RCB committee does a number of things. It organizes litter sweeps twice a year on the island, and we have started to coordinate with the Conservancy on that because the Conservancy does litter sweeps on the beach, and we typically do them in the neighborhoods and on the roads. We also organize a purchase of trees and plants for a couple of purposes. One is for members who want to get a really good deal on plants, and the other is for members who would like to purchase a tree to memorialize a person, and we will plant that for them or deliver that to them. We do get a very good discount on these plants, and I would encourage anyone who is interested in adding, we do native plants from our list in the ARC guidelines. Anyone who would like to add plants to their yard, it's a great opportunity to get them over here at the lowest possible cost. The members are listed there. One thing I will also note is that Barbara and Dale, who are our co-chairs, are also plugged into our activity of the pollinator garden. Not specifically a BHA activity, but they have been very supportive of that and really instrumental in making that happen. Next slide. These are just some pictures and a little bit about the reforest. It's the 5th time we've done this. We started it after Hurricane Florence when we lost so many trees, and we have continued it each year. Again, I would encourage anyone who's interested in getting a tree or bushes or to go on your property to take advantage of that, and we advertise that during the year.
Thank you, John. Christine?
I serve as board liaison to a couple of different committees, but one of my favorites this year has been the ER committee. Betsy Stevens, who's here today, somewhere in the back of the room, has chaired this committee for quite some time and has kept it full of events. As you can see, just a few on the slide up there. Some new events in 2023, which proved to be quite popular, were island-wide trick or treating, the garden club, along with the pollinator kickoff, and of course, the Easter egg hunt was a huge hit. Way too many events for me to name here today. Let's not forget the Smith Island Social, which takes place tonight at the Bald Island Club. I would like to thank Betsy, we would all like to thank Betsy for her selfless service on this committee and let her know that she leaves this committee in the very capable hands of our new two co-chairs that make one Betsy, Chris Riley and Millicent O'Connor. I know they'll do an amazing job. Please check the BHA website often as these ladies have a few new events planned for 2024.
through the long range planning and think of it as a think tank for the Bald Head Association. It looks at the big picture, where we're going and how we are going to get there. And we have varies from year to year how much we call on them for specific tasks that come up. This year there were one, a very large one that they put a tremendous amount of work in on, did a fabulous job, and they reported to the board and gave us outside that guidance opinion related to the battery four. To what should we do with the battery four? Should we sell it? Should we not sell it? And we involved going back and thinking about the question of why did we acquire it in the first place? Some 8 or 9 years ago, and studied it, did a job, reported to the board. Decision was all the reasons related to the purchase and acquisition of it in 2016, I believe, still are solid and maintaining it as an asset for the Bald Head Association and future expansion, preservation of historical property is significant to the island. All make good sense. We thank them for that. We thank them for you. Now, go to the next slide. Community-wide standards. And community-wide standards, Joe is the liaison for that. And as I said, couldn't be with us here today, but I must tell you, Joe has done an outstanding job 2 years ago when he joined the board. Asked him if he would be the liaison for the Community-Wide Standards Committee. Debbie Grunheller has chaired that committee. With exception, and Joe, Debbie together really hit it off, worked well, and Joe really got into it and it's been a positive. And as you know, we adopted the community-wide standards for Bald Head Association in 2018. As I said, as you know, because I'm sure you all read them regularly, just to remind yourself of the obligation, because they're on the website. And it's fairly brief. I'll just again read a little bit of it to you. It's a little bit of it. What does it mean, community-wide standards? It is all property owners shall maintain and preserve their lots and structures located on their lots in a clean, neat, sightly, and attractive condition, and provide for the removal of all trash or refuge from their homes. Maintenance will include but not be limited to repair and replacement. That's pretty much it. We got a little bit more on there, but it really comes down to that. Maintain your property in clean, neat, sightly, and attractive condition. And the reason we do that is because we want them to look clean, neat, and sightly. It maintains the island, look the way it started when we got here, the way we want to keep it. Community-wide Standards Committee takes their work very seriously. They have done a great job, and I'm here to report to you that we need a couple more people. some people have turned out. Somebody got elected to the village council. And so we need volunteers. Please consider the community-wide standards committee. Would enjoy it and would also do a service to each of us. That is the community-wide standards. And go to the next one, recognition of community members whose 3-year terms have expired. Like to thank you. I think you have in front of you there, this all we have on or their terms out. And if I say term out, essentially people are appointed to a committee for 3 years. And they can re-up after 3 years for another normal. Some do, some don't. Some lives change. Sometimes you go and move. Things happen, life happens. Now gotten off their committees. They've done an outstanding job for us. We appreciate their service. Slide 38. (10 a.m.) Now I can close the election. It's closed, officially closed. I only do what Terry tells me to do. Prepared.
Yeah.
We have an excellent. But now we go to slide 38. This is just sort of a reinforcement of what several of us have said all along. We want you to volunteer. We'll like enjoy it and we need to. Fine, our island, take care of it, give us some action. So all we described, we've done it for years. Don't you want to join? BHA recognizes that much of the work that the association accomplishes is due to the commitment of our volunteers. We are always in need of volunteers. And I believe we have vacancies on all of our committees. If you think you'd like to volunteer, contact a board, committee, or staff member to see where you might fit based on your preferences. Or if you need a little more information, you can go to baldheadassociation.com to read the community committee descriptions, what they do. Even if you aren't a full-time resident, we can connect you electronically to activities and meetings. So please don't let that stop you from volunteering. Applications can be found on the resources table. Please consider filling out one today before you leave. Or you can go to baldheadassociation.com. When you get home, fill out an application right from our website. We go to the next slide. BHA's 2023 priorities. And by priorities, the board traditionally meets at its annual retreat in February to develop that year's priorities for the organizations. What are we going to focus on this year? What's the most important? Reports are shared at each board meeting on the progress toward those priorities. And that is each board meeting, one of the things we specifically do is we report to you, our members. How are we doing on those 6 or 7 priorities that kind of correspond with the number of directors we have, and each director has one area of responsibility. That's your priority this year. And then we report at the meeting to you, how are we doing on what we set for our priorities? I invite property owners to attend our regular committee meetings that are currently held on the 2nd Friday of each month. Our regular meeting, 2nd Friday of each month at 11 a.m. at the association show. Get set up. Work is done. Flooding that's report. Hopefully that will be done in March, and so we'll have a place for you to join us. One of the most important priorities is, Robert, would you talk to us about that in some detail?
Okay, thank you, Alan. With respect to financial stewardship, there's three basic areas that we focus on: dues, debt, and reserves. First, with respect to the dues, with the help of the staff, finance committee, and the board, we put together a budget where we make basically a best guess estimate of what we think the revenues are going to be and what we think the expenses are going to be. And the idea is that those are equal in nature and offsetting. Because we're not for profit, we're not in the business of generating revenues to have a profit, so to speak. We like at the end of the day for the dues to come down. For the income statement, so to speak, to come down to zero, revenue expenses offset. So this year, with respect to the dues, we were able to keep the basic annual dues level flat from last year. So there's no increase in the dues for last year for a homeowner or for a lot owner. And just to remind you, the 3-year special assessment for the wildlife overlook, that's behind us now. So there'll be no special assessment for budget year 24. Second, on the debt, well, I'm happy to say we have no debt. We haven't had debt for a number of years. And we're fortunate that we have been in a position where we haven't had to consider incurring any debt. And I'm assuming that that's going to be true moving forward. And then the last thing is reserves. We have over $3 million worth of assets. We have a policy in place to establish reserves so that theoretically, at the point in time when an asset needs to be replaced, we have already reserved for 70% of the value of that asset. And we have a plan in place to get to those levels. I think we're on the next slide. Right, so next slide just shows you a chart of the last, I guess, since 2015, what the dues were doing over those various years. So you can see that it was flat 15, 17, 18, 20. We had 3 years of 21, 22, 23, where the dues went up fairly significantly. And this year, with a lot of effort on behalf of a lot of people, we figured out a way to keep the dues flat for the previous year. The next slide. This is just a reminder that we had a pressure in, I think, Gary, 2020, and we coming out of that study, we realized that we were under reserved, and so we put together a program to try to get our reserve charges to a level to meet that so-called requirement that we set, that we have 70% of the value of an asset reserved, fully reserved by the time the asset needs to be replaced. And so we put together a plan to try to get to a level of annual reserve charges over a 5-year period. 2024 will be the fourth of that 5-year period. So the expense category for reserves in 2024 went up a little bit. That will happen again in 2025, and then after that, we're on a trajectory to be at 70% for all the assets.
Thank you, Robert, and we appreciate your fine work. And all done this year. Reserve accomplishment that these gentlemen have done for us individually, collectively, and it's really a significant accomplishment. Because from a financial stability point of view, we are a very large homeowners association. It is essential. We have the reserves we need for our assets. Sure, we're protected for the future. You're protected for the future. Well ahead of the pack homeowners association. Next, on the horizon, what's the future? Christine?
So enhancing member communications, we've updated our website, more online forums, member forum, targeted communications. We continue to offer free and low-cost events and activities to our members. We'll continue community-wide standards evaluations, ongoing focus and expense control, prioritize digitization, wait, 5 times, of ARC files and home plans, work with the village of Bald Head Island to enhance the dog park, complete conveyance of lagoons in whole or in part to the Bald Head Island Club. Continue working closely with all island entities on behalf of the membership. We also look forward to working with our 2 new board members.
Slide, if you like this. That is time for an intermission. We'll take a 10-minute intermission. We've completed the report of the BHA. Right, I can't. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we are ready to resume. Thank you for coming back. Now time to hear from our other island entities about the wide range of activities that enriches our island. With the exception of Old Head Island Limited, we traditionally receive additional time since the developer really has no other significant need for relaying information to property owners. Each organization represented has 5 emails for their individual report. Because some of the issues brought up in these reports will inevitably generate questions from the audience, we will open up the floor for questions after David Sawyer, who is the last presenter, is finished. Also, remember that we'll have all of the presentations uploaded to our website by early next week. Today's presentation will be uploaded to BHA's YouTube channel within 24 hours. First, we invite Mayor Peter Quinn from the Village of Bald Head to speak. Mayor Quinn.
Thank you. Excited to be here. At the same time, I sat down with Chris McCall the other day and started talking about, well, what have we got done this year? My whole list. Chris is just overwhelmed when I asked him. We had just a touch, really productive, and also we've been involved in a lot of things. Put together all my notes and then spoke earlier this morning and it's be 5 minutes. Well, okay, throw this away. We have 2 very important things. I want to say that they're immediate and they're very impactful that need to be discussed, and one of them hasn't been discussed for a while. But keep in mind right now, we have to go by vote. So many members of the association, your island residents, if you don't vote. And I understand that, but this is a critical thing. Our beaches are, they're kind of a buffer for us. They take a beating every year. Combination of storms, just general currents, the freighters coming through. And we need to be taking care of them every year, or every 2 years. And as it turns out, every 6 years, plus or minus, we're putting the bill for taking care of those beaches. And that year is coming up. So we have a GO bond that's a GO bond, general obligation bond, that every 6 years we float so that we can afford to take care of the beach. This year is a little bit more special because we're trying to take on a big portion of the beach going all the way up East Beach by the Schultz. And when you're looking at our beach replenishment programs, we really want you to take a look at it from a long range view. We've been studying the beaches, developing engineering for the beaches for decades. This isn't something we're doing in 2025, and it's a special thing. This is part of a longer plan to maintain our beaches, which we have to do. There is there's things that I haven't before, but I can't stress enough how important it is for you to get onto our website. There's a lot of information on the website. I want you to get familiar with it. Even if you're not a voting person, I can't imagine you going into any of the restaurants on the island or the bar and having a conversation and not have this come up. So you need to be versed so you can talk to people that are they're representing you on this. So it's important that you're up to it too. There's also outside, we have some brochures about the GO bond. So please take one, refresh yourself. Second thing that I wanted to talk about, which has been quiet on the island lately, is transportation. So you all know that the village is in 3 lawsuits right now. These are, they're contentious to a point, but there's things that are coming out of them that I think are productive. They are one thing that you often think of when you think of the lawsuits at the other side. they have to be bad guys. I want to tell you that's not the case. I don't think the limit is that like adversary. Chad and I talk on a regular basis. Chad is dedicated to the village to make sure the things that happen with transportation, the village is up on it. He supports us. Right now, with those cases, those things, you know, we've talked about them a lot in the past. And they're on their own train right now. There's, I expect, I hope that everything will be resolved by the end of the year. Not sure that can happen, but in the meantime, there's a whole other track going on as well. I've been talking to Chad, and I expect that, between the two of us, we both put in a lot of energy to try and find a solution outside. And, that is mutually beneficial to everybody. And, someday soon, I think be talking about where conversations have been done. I don't know how much time I have, but there's, I just want to talk about one good, one nice. So, the Marina Park, I don't know whether you've been out there lately, but the T-Dock has been reconstructed. And the pollinator garden has been, established and has plans growing forward. There's also a artificial reef that is planned and is planned there too. And when you look at Marina Garden, I think is Marina Park, it's a good example of village, community happening all together. You have the association, you have the conservancy, you have the village, you have volunteers, all, and then you have the school. Everybody is involved in all these things. And the outcome is an ever-changing park. I hate it. Within I'm around. Ask me questions and I'll try and answer them. If I can't, I'll find out where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I would like to invite Tammy McIntyre, President of the Public Service Auxiliary, BSA.
Thank you, Ellen, for getting the name correct. It is the Public Service Auxiliary, although I am Tam McIntyre, I'm president, Debbie Ward's here, our vice president, Betsy. We are the longest serving volunteer organization that I know, over one of them is, that has been on Bowman since the 1990s. We were originally founded, as you see in the top right hand corner there, is the 501c3 organization that are homeowners who have had issues. And a lot of visitors who have had either medical or whatever issues, they give us money and appreciation that we can use then to support public safety. And everybody asks me, what's the difference? So I put it up here. Public safety officers are people on the island. Public safety volunteers are a small elite group that get training every Thursday. They are trained to go in fires. They are trained to do water rescues. That's quite a commitment. And then there's the public service auxiliary. That's us. We are, I say, the most important layer to support all these people. We learned a lot in recent incidents. And I'm talking about the Keeper's Landing fire and the Lighthouse Landing fire that you all know about. I was there that night. It was quite a scary thing. And I'm the daughter of a volunteer fire chief. So I've been to a lot of fires. We decided to kind of reorganize with the help of the public safety officers and get closer with the volunteers. So we divided ourselves into teams. The teams are on the left-hand side there. Pretty simple, really. We need people like at the Lighthouse Landing fire. People came from all over other departments. They get to Baldhead, where do they go? So we have people that meet them at the ferry and transport them to the site. We have an emergency site team. The volunteers get a rehab tent at a fire, for example, one small example. And we set up next to them and we help support. We have nurses also, people that can help, because when those, I will tell you personally, when those guys come out of a fire, when they can only be in there in 20 minutes, they come out, they're exhausted.
They need medical checks and they need to get all their equipment off, and it's quite a process. So we're getting more established to do that and support. There's also traffic assistance. We have a lot of really good people who want to come and help, but you can't go to the site. I will tell all of you that if you have an emergency on the island and you want to help, we appreciate it. Come here to the firehouse. We will have a station staffed here. We will be happy to receive your help. But in the meantime, sign up for one of our teams. We have a supply team because the officers and the volunteers can't keep going back and forth they might need additional water or food or supply. We can transport it to the site, and we're trained to do that. We have a wonderful kitchen here, but we also, and so we have a kitchen team, and they always, by the way, that's the source of our big fundraiser that we have for public safety every year, which is our chili supper. And that's gonna be, by the way, October, Halloween weekend. We urge you to come. It's best chili, best food on the island that night. And then we also have a food runner team because the restaurants, the Claude at the market, they want to help and send things. So we're just trying to get coordinated. Here's the deal. You don't have to be here 24/7 like I am. You just have to answer your phone. You don't have to be a full-time resident. You can be a volunteer and just tell me, I'm only here as a summer months. We'll put you on a list to work it out because we need lots of people to call. I had a list at the time of the, Debbie and I, at the time of the canning fire, we had about 25 people. There was 3 of us on the island. So we need lots of people. All you have to do is answer your phone and say, I'm here, I'm not here, I'm coming to the fire station to help. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this little PR campaign. We don't have a lot of annual meetings. We have one annual meeting, that's tomorrow at 1 o'clock right here. Come find out more information about the teams and what you can do. I really think that that's the most important thing that we can do on this island is help our neighbors in time of an emergency. So thank you.
Next, we have Chris Webb, Executive Director of the Old Baldy Foundation. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Hello, I think I'm just gonna ask you to page up and down, is that okay? Welcome to North Carolina, 4 seasons in 4 days. I'm just gonna real quickly go through the most important thing that's happened with us this year, which is our $750,000 grant from the National Park Service, which is finally happening. We, in 2020, during COVID, we applied for this grant through the State Historic Preservation Office. It was an emergency grant following Hurricanes Florence and Michael, and it was designated for structures on the National Historic Register. So we were awarded $750,000. The thing I want you to notice in this picture, there's a turf mound around the base of the lighthouse. And what that is called is a glacis wall. And the intention for that glacis wall is to deflect water away from the foundation. The foundation is sandstone, so it's very porous, so it wicks water up. But in 2017, we were able to waterproof the entire tower when we spent about $400,000 of our own funds to rebuild the lantern room, the roof, and the vent ball, and the sandstone capped copper roof. So the tower is very dry, but this glacis wall, this picture here is about 1903 on the left. It's taken by a surveyor. His name was Herbert Bamber. It shows evidence of a masonry glacis wall. On the right is about 1910. That's actually the Boyd family of the historic Boyd Hotel that was once here on the island. Bottom left is about the 70s. You can see the rubble of the glacis wall. And then bottom right is about the 80s, and there's no wall, it's gone. So when we applied for the grant, we wanted to put a masonry glacis wall in. The state said, no, there's no proof that it was there, even though we had photographic evidence. So they wanted to do an archaeological dig as part of the grant in order to prove what, when, and where. That it existed, what the material was, and when it was put in. We had no evidence of when it was put in. We did have evidence that this turf and dirt was put in the mid-90s. But it's not working. It is eroding at a drastic rate, and the concern is protecting that sandstone foundation. So next slide. So we did an archaeological dig. This is on the west side of the lighthouse. The first picture, you can see the foundation. The second picture, they dug the trench all the way out. Next slide. Now you can see the sandstone foundation and then flat sandstone under that 5 courses of sandstone blocks. So we found the wall. Which was great. It's very exciting because very rarely do you do an archaeological dig and actually find something intact. And this is part of the wall. So we were required to do a second dig. Next slide. Oh, anyway, that's all the big pictures. We were required to do a second dig just to prove, and exactly the same dimensions away from the foundation, there's the wall. So we're hoping in the future, this evidence will allow us to rebuild that wall and restore it to what it was historically. The major part of the project is the mortar. Albany has about 8,500 square feet of mortar on its exterior. In 2017, we did mortar repair. This time we found about 1,450 square feet, 5 times what we thought we were going to find to repair the mortar. And really the process is they scale all the walls, with a ball peen hammer, they go inch by inch, and when they hear a void, they take the mortar off. So they scale it down to the bare brick, which these are handmade bricks, so they're very porous. They cut into the mortar. Next slide. You can see the brick there. They first put what they call a scratch coat. This is custom mixed and shipped from Pennsylvania. It's a lime-based mortar, which is historically what you have to do to preserve masonry, not Portland cement. So the picture on the right is the scratch coat. Go ahead. Next, you have the finish coat that goes over. Sometimes we can't fit the scratch coat because it's too thin, so it only is going to receive a finish coat. Go ahead. It's already. Oh, okay. So we'll just flip through the pictures. This is protecting it, putting moisture on it so it cures slowly. And we're doing work on the interior too, which is something we haven't done in years. My message to you is Ovaldi is healthier now than she probably was in the early 1900s.
We have a lot. We have the village chapel.
Good morning. I have no slides. So, yeah, there you go. You can just look at me, right? So Kevin Arata, I'm the communications chair until tomorrow. And then I give it to somebody else after 5 years. Many of us are going to be off this year. So we have 11 people on our board at the chapel. We've got 2 ad hoc committee members, and we've got 2 paid staff. But we've had over 100 volunteers. So what you've heard repeatedly here today is all of you are part of what makes this island work. So just keep that in your mind as we go through. And what I'd like to add too is that we're a village chapel. I think I mentioned this last year. We're not a village church, but we try to be.
So what's the difference between a church and a chapel? A church has a paid minister and a lot of paid staff. We have what we call a working board, and I had to look this up to make sure I was on point. Working board versus governing board. The working board creates directives and then they execute them themselves. And we execute them with all our volunteers, right? But we don't have a governing board, we do the work. I'll talk about Chip in a minute, but as I was coming in before and talking to Chip, so Chip is a working board member. And so literally as he's up there for his last day of duty, he spent 4 hours up at the chapel with leaf blowers and weed eaters and cutters and doing all the stuff that Chip does, but that's kind of where we go. And how we roll. And so from a services perspective, we do weekly services. We double our worship services over the summer months. We do Christmas and Easter, and that comes up to 72 services a year. That doesn't include it. Is NFA in here? Cloud. Oh, okay. So NFA in the cloud, as many of you might know, hosts or sets up all of the Catholic services. And so there's a dozen of those that we did last year. And so again, 5,000 people attended over the course of the year. It sounds simple, but as I said, we're out of church. So we got this guy, Dr. Rocky Roush, who is our collector of ministers. And so Rocky, along with Mariana, our admin assistant, gets all of those people here. Patty Caven, many of you know Patty, she's retired, unfortunately, but Mariana is acting in her absence. And so they're the ones that gather the ministers. The nice thing that Rocky has done over the course of this past year, many of you have noticed that, is we've gotten 20 new ministers on board for those 72 services. He's got 20 more lined up new for next year. What I forgot to ask is, everybody close your eyes for a minute. Raise your hand if you went to a chapel thing over the last year. Keep your eyes shut. Somebody's cheating out there, put them down. All right, so I want to see who's going to church and who's not. But most of you in here have gone to church at some point. So this kind of affects you, right? And so Rocky has done a great job of getting all these new people to come in. We're kind of getting new blood, if you will. And that's why we get new board members, because new board members have new ideas and they make things happen better. For each service, and again, I say this every year, but I remind you, I forgot this when I used to sit out in the audience in chapel. It takes like a dozen people to run a service, which nobody thinks. I never thought about that before. So every time you go into church, and there's a minister up there, well, there's 12 more people behind the scenes that make that happen. We also host a bunch of special events. Some of them, or a lot of them, musical in nature. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Cindy Sellers, who many of you probably know, who does organ, is our music director. And we found out this year that she just celebrated her 25th year here. So that's pretty cool. She's been here a long time. She's one of our paid staff that helps make what we do so wonderful. She's ably assisted by Mary Mears, and you're going to hear their names here as I keep going, like Chip and Mary, because that's the working board that gets stuff done, and they're all your friends and neighbors. So Mary Mears this year is the music chair as well, and she's also the first vice president, and she's also helped. We had a couple other musical events with Mike Charles at the Yacht Club, if you saw him. Nixon, Blevins Engage up at the courtyard. We did a Christmas music carol in December, and then we did Christmas caroling this past year. Second year in a row we've done that. I hope that continues. We got to traipse across the island, sing to like a dozen places, a bunch of homeowners from Middle Island all the way in, public safety and both the clubs, and it was just a wonderful experience. We hosted our annual Memorial Day ceremony, which we've been doing for years. Over 100 people come to that every year. And then in January of this last year, before I spoke last, I did a women's retreat, which was very well attended. Christine Sacklaven, Steve Sacklaven, who's also on our board, put that together with a bunch of folks that helped. We look forward to doing that again this year. Steve and Christina have it on the plan for October. From an outreach perspective, we do a whole bunch of stuff. Two of the biggest things we do is the Angel Tree Project, and then we do the Thanksgiving Card Project, both of which collect probably, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000 worth of stuff for people on the other side. And so it's that giving community we have, led by Randy Monroe, who's got a lot of other things going on this island, as many of you know, but she does this outreach thing too with her volunteers, and she's telling me to wrap up. I got a lot of words from this last night. So we have 27 weddings that we've done. Chip Berry, as I've mentioned, with what he does up on the building and grounds. Kirby Ward is in here, but between Kirby and Chip, they're up there at 7 a.m. every day, making the chapel a nice place. We've got Elizabeth Kinney, who has done a lot of different things from Island Outreach to Alter Guild, the second vice president. She comes off the board this year. Linda Rabb is our hospitality chair. She's also served as treasurer this year, helping out David Beam. We've got David, who many of you might know has faced some significant health challenges. We ask you to keep him in our prayers, but he's staying with us. And then behind the folks, this is most important, we've got Randy Monroe, who does things in a number of capacities as Fulton Island Services. We've got guys like Chad Paul in the back and Josh White from BHA Limited, who do great things. We've got Claude Pope, who sends out our emails every week to a large audience. It's all those people that help make the wonderful things happen here that the chapel is able to do. And so for that, we are very thankful.
Thank you, Kevin. Chad Paul, the CEO of Bald Head Limited, speak to us next. Welcome, Paul.
Appreciate it. And we're gonna take limited activities and transportation activities, combine it into the same 5 minutes. And we'll be here at the end for the Q&A. That's usually where we get most of the comments. We're gonna start off by breaking down limited island activities. And where we are and what our plans are going for this coming year. As all of the primary constituents that you all are gonna do, so the village, the association, the conservancy, the chapel, and the club. We have identified about 51 pieces of property or things that are entangled. And we need to untangle them with those entities, and those entities need to have that. So for example, Joe Bronner's got a wonderful history here on the island. And this year with the association and the club, one of the old well houses that was in place prior to when the water sewer came to the island. There was a well house, and the association owned that property. We gave that property to them when we turned over utilities to the village. When we turned over to the village utilities, we kept with the village several other wellheads for emergency stuff that runs through the forest. But this one was kind of like, well, the property we had turned over to the association like we're supposed to, but you still have this well house there that has a gigantic tank that would need to be cut up and get done. And so this was something that goes back to Joe Bronner being on the club days. We worked with the club, we worked with the association, with Carrie. We've got a time, and some of you guys may have played golf in the fall. We got them out there and we cleaned it up. We got that cut down. There's a lot of things like that still within the Mitchell legacy assets that need to do that. And then there's things like swales and things like that that need to work with Chris McCall. So I worked with Chris last week. We will be talking about some of that at the Poultry Treat in February. We're working on right now some property that is not buildable, that by the covenants we need to turn over to the association. We're working with them there. A lot of this stuff is interior pieces of property in the woods, that kind of thing, turn that over. So that'll be a big part of what we're going to do with all the organizations. But Mitchell still have some areas along the golf course where the fairway's there, and then Mitchell still only like 1 foot off the fairway, and then there's the common area. Well, it doesn't make sense really to have the 1 foot, right? So we've got to figure out how to transition that and do that. There's some other non-buildable pieces that make sense to go to the club as well longer term. So that's one of the big things that we're going to be focused on, and that we continue to work on. We've identified it all. We're going to do that. We will probably build or be involved in the construction of 6 additional homes down in the Southern Living area down at Cape Fear Station going into this year. We will probably again partner and build those houses. We've got 6 lots down there that we'll probably work on that coming forward. As it relates to the marinas, I want to say that Peter and I do have a very good relationship and a good working relationship. We have a couple things going on with Bald Island Marina. We're going to really need to dredge that marina. There are some complications with that as it relates to the outstanding litigation with the village on that. I think we have a plan to work through that and get that done. But that's something that we are working on with Steve Heads and the yacht club, is to get that dredged. The marina at Deep Point in Southport. That marina, I've got a lot of people, when are we going to condominiumize that and sell that? We've been at that's been on the plan for a long period of time. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be something we're going to be able to have ready going into the season. That's also tied up in some of the litigation with the village, and we're not going to be able to condominiumize those slips and sell those slips to you all until we get some of that litigation resolved. So that's where we are on the marinas. Let's see here. We will also There are two commercial associations associated with the property on Edward T. Extension and the property on Maritime Way. We no longer control the voting of the ability of the commercial associations on Edward Teach. We sold all the commercial property there. We will turn that over to those property owners and stand that up this year. Maritime Way, even though we still effectively control that because of the properties we still own on Maritime Way, we'll look to stand that up. I would suggest it probably makes sense for those two individual associations to talk about merging and coming together, but that will be what they'll decide that amongst themselves. I won't participate and force anybody to do anything one or the other on that. Let's see here. That's kind of where we are on limited operations and what we're doing and what we've got planned for next year. As it relates to transportation, I'm going to break that up into two pieces. One, operations and just day-to-day existence, and two, where we are, where we foresee the litigation going. On the operations side, the big issue and the big thing that was done last year was we went to electronic ticketing. I would suggest as of the end of September, 85% of all tickets are now purchased electronically, either on the app or on the web. And I'm even more surprised, about 2/3, 1/3 by own app purchases versus ticket class purchases on the web. So the transition happened, it was great, it worked through, all done. That I would suggest that we will probably still always have about 10 or 15% that will be first come, first served paper tickets or just standby paper tickets. And the reason for that is there are a lot of riders from Brunswick County that don't have the ability to do anything except pay cash for their ticket. So that will, I think that will stay there for a while, and the data would suggest that that's where we're at. Going into this coming year, there are two items that'll be near and dear to your all's hearts. One is a problematic issue that we're running. If you've seen what's happened in the last year with the pharmacies and independent drug carriers, and the litigation that's occurred with where those drugs are going. Historically, as a courtesy, not as a service, I want to be careful. If there was medication that was needed on the island, we had an ability, we treated it like a firearm, it had to be reported, and taken to the cabin of the boat and taken over and delivered here to you all. I would say that in 2024, that practice is probably definitely going to end. And we've got to solve that for you all. So the ability for you to get a pharmacy on the mainland, to have somebody deliver your drugs, hand it off to our captain, have him come over here and hand it off to somebody else. You can understand the chain of title issues there on what happens to that medication. Some of it needs to be kept cold and some of it needs to be stored differently. We can't assume that liability, and a lot of transportation carriers are finding themselves in difficult situations with those medications where, oh, it's supposed to be 24 pills and only, a dozen shows up and the other 12 are on the street somewhere. Those are the issues we're facing, plus how to maintain drugs that need to be stored. We can't, as a utility, we can't, there's nothing we can do in terms of storing that medication. So we're working through those issues. I would suggest that the outcome there is we're not going to be able to take unaccompanied medication from the mainland to the island. And that would probably be something that will happen in 2020. The other thing that we're working on with the Utilities Commission is something that's been talked about since we moved to Deep Point in 2009. We moved to Deep Point in 2009 from Indigo Plantation. That move, where those marinas and where those ferry terminals were located, the Deep Point move adds about 5 to 7 minutes to the trip. And we kept the 30-minute schedule. I would suggest kept the 30-minute schedule because it was also easy for everybody that worked for limited time to remember, okay, boats are 30 minutes. If I miss this one, I've got a 30-minute boat. And it would be very difficult to do like the airports where you're leaving at 8:13 with how they do it at the gate slots. What we've done is we've looked at that. The other issue is in 2010, we had the one and only rate case. At the time, we were transporting about 210,000, 250,000 passengers a year. I would suggest this year we're going to come in just under 400,000 passengers, almost double other things that have changed in the last decade is roughly about 350 more homes have been built on the island. All of those are located primarily down on the east end of the island. The people forget the 30-minute schedule is also tied to the train schedule. And with 350 more homes, 350 more stops, the tram riders can get down there, make all their pickups, get back, tie it to a 30-minute schedule, results in which you all know. There's no slack in the system. We get one adverse weather event, we get one emergency event at in the morning. There's no ability to pick up that time, and so every just gets backed up. So we are working with the Utilities Commission and we'll work with the village and other constituents to move just the main ferry system. We're not talking about the contractor employee book. That's not an issue with the 30-minute schedule. The main ferry system, moving that to a 45-minute cycle rather than a 30-minute cycle. So we are working through those issues there on that. So that's where we are on the operations. That's what we've got coming for y'all on that. And we've got a long way to go on the whole schedule thing. Got to work through all that, figure out how we manage all that. Lastly, on the litigation, last year there was a question at the end, what do I think, how long? My estimate then was 18 to 24 months. I think I'm right on track. Notwithstanding the mayor's comments, if you add appeals, and so far, every legal decision has been appealed. We've got a trial date on one of the litigations coming up in April in the Superior Court of Brunswick County. If history is any guide, no matter what that outcome is, that case is going to get appealed. And if that gets appealed, that'll add 9 months. And so my sense is, unless there's some kumbaya on all the issues, the mayor and I will probably be here next year saying, well, we're closer, but we're not done yet. So that's where we are in that. We're waiting on how the appeals go on sub 21 with the Utilities Commission, and the village has appealed to sub 22, which is their right to appeal sub 22. That has not been scheduled to be heard yet. So in terms of time, in terms of dealing with all the lawyers and all the other jazz, I would anticipate that we have probably another year. Maybe we can get lucky and get something done by the end of the year. That might be possible. I'm not saying it won't be possible, but the course of events it's the course of events. So thanks very much. We'll be here for afterwards to take questions later.
Chris Shank, on behalf of the Conservative, will speak to us next.
I'm not usually speaking into a microphone. How y'all doing? See. So I've been doing this my 8th time talking about what we learned in 2023. And I always want to bring this up. The first slide, the we, bigger than the other words. That's all for that. That word is purposeful, right? We're all in this together. Every year that we need to keep getting bigger, we want all you to stay as beautiful and healthy as this. If you're interested in membership, call me. I'm happy to bring you even more into the week. So let's get rolling. I've only got 5 minutes. Oh, back up. So what we learned? Well, it was our 40th anniversary. That changed things. Bald Head loves 40 years of education, conservation, and preservation, and a lot of cocktail parties. And we had a big cocktail party celebration in August of last year, and we had speakers that messed that slide up. That's good. Dr. Wester founded the Conservancy along with a few others back in '83, and we had speakers that came and talked from all the decades. It was awesome to hear the stories. And Charlie Holmes, I don't know how many of y'all know Charlie Holmes, second to same American. Wonderful step back in the time. There's some crazy pictures from the folks that attended. It was a wonderful way to celebrate. One of the things we look at continuously, we try and understand the health of the salt marsh and the tidal creek, the maritime forest, the dune system, the aquifer. Most people don't appreciate that there's freshwater below us. That's what helps support the forest, right? The interactions of all these things are important in understanding how healthy the entire ecosystem is. We'll get to the wildlife in a little bit, the alligators and the coyotes and all that. But one thing we're really interested in is making sure we understand what happens in the creek. The water in our creek doesn't just come from Bald Head. It Cape Fear River has a massive influence on water quality in the creek. So some of the things we measure are nutrients that just have ammonia, nitrate, phosphate. Those are nutrients. You put too many nutrients in the water, it's like fertilizing the water, you end up with algae. The water doesn't need that. It's a beautiful recycling system that doesn't need us to sprinkle fertilizer around. So you can see there's some fluctuations in there, and I'm not going to get into it too much. But what I will say is that those lines right there, if they stay at or below those lines regularly, that means the nutrient levels are low. Our system right now looks really good. Our tidal creek has really good water quality, and that's really important. Okay, that's really important for the future. Chlorophyll, it just kind of measures the algae and it pulses a little bit, but it comes back down. That's the key. When it goes up, does it come back down? How quickly does it come back down? It comes back down. Bacteria is an indicator of runoff from land and wastewater treatment plants inputs. Relatively low. Again, we see little blips, but it comes back down. So I would say right now, we see big pulses, but they subside. The creek is looking good. We're really happy about that. Our deer population. So we do two types of ways to assess a deer population: spotlight surveys and fall camera. We combine those to get a ratio of male to females, also number of fawns. But if you notice, the red number is what we'll talk about for the population index. 200 is kind of considered the barometer. If we get above 200, we start thinking about managing. They could have potential impacts on the forest, on the other vegetation around. As long as it's below that, we think we're relatively good. Well, you notice the red line starting to creep up a little bit. It's now 173. Obviously, that's not an exact number. They don't show up for a census. We have to do a lot of but roughly the trend, it's going up a little bit. And why is that, right? We've seen a lot of fawns. So a few years ago, we saw no fawns in our canyons. Now we're starting to see them. The unit contraception that we haven't done in a few years has gone away. Maybe we're seeing a little decrease in the coyote predation because that takes out a lot of fawns too. But those fawn numbers are starting to creep up. And once they become yearlings, they can start having twins. And so the population numbers can increase pretty quickly. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Speaking of coyotes, how many? We did a project this year. We partnered with Liz Korepka at North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Coyote lets you know where they are around the island. There's a small picture at the top. So we sampled that and did genetic studies of all their scat. Okay, so we found 9 to 12, and we can talk later if you want to know why. But there's a handful of them that kind of hang around East Beach. The ones I know, there's some on the southwest side of the island, right? But they're not leaving us. There's signals on the roads, like the ones on the east side. And then we saw a couple that moved back and forth between Middle Island and Fort Fisher. So that pathway to Fort Fisher is actually relieving the population stress on Baldhead. You won't just get hundreds of coyotes. The little ones will leave eventually. And so having that migration pattern is helpful. And Fort Fisher also traps a handful, 5 to 10, maybe 15 every year. And that provides a nice pathway. So it relieves some of our pressure on the coyotes. Alligators. This is a very interesting study. You can see this is tracing back time over here. And it looks like there's a lot of alligators, maybe about 25 to 30, but the blues are the small ones. They're all the babies. Alligators are great at controlling their own population. Some of you may have seen that. And the key is, right, we only have a couple of the super big ones, right? Just a couple. They will make sure the little ones don't start getting in their space. So they kind of self control, right? So getting there, yeah. One thing that we're worried about though is the contamination in some of these. Really high Gen X in alligator, the highest in the Cape Fear region was the bald-head gator. That's a whole different topic. Freshwater quality, the Ibis Pond and Lagoon. We wanted to know what's the water quality in these freshwater systems too. And there's some issues. Why is there a fish kill in a lagoon? Well, most of the time it's because the oxygen gets completely depleted. All that algae dies. The bacteria consume the oxygen, fish can die rapidly overnight. So that's one thing we're interested in the water body in the lagoons. I want to make sure we get this in. Land preservation has become increasingly important. We partnered with Conservation Trust in North Carolina, and we mapped out what are the most important areas for preservation on the island. The darker colors show where they are. Middle Island and some areas around East Beach. Those are the areas we need to focus our efforts. They're really important ecologically. It's a really interesting model. I'm happy to help again. Okay, sea turtles. Great 5-year run. You can see the baseline's really high in the last 5 years. That's good. We've also been tracking the sea turtles off the coast. Why are we doing that? Well, one, we want to know where the foraging areas. We're also interested in, are they passing through the wind lease farm areas? And they are. They actually stay close to the coast. The old thinking was they took the Gulf Stream north. That's not necessarily true. They actually stay close to the north. And FK 802, FFK 802 lost a flipper, but still came back on the beach and laid her 6 nests this year, 650 eggs, really remarkable story. I want to make sure there's it, Tuesday night, put this on your calendar. Johnson Coast Sustainability Symposium, the 3rd annual one. David Geffner's a writer at UNC Wilmington, and he's got a book about what natural systems will be like when his daughter is his age. And he will be giving the lecture at the club. It's more of a storytelling time. So we're excited about that. Thanks to our life members. David, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and David Sawyer will be our final presenter. CEO of the BHA Annual Meeting.
Morning, everyone. We're going to move pretty quickly through this final piece of the presentation. First off, we're excited to share this the 50th anniversary of the Bullhead Island Club this year. So we're going to have some special celebrations all throughout the year to recognize this accomplishment. We want to touch upon a couple of the highlights in the next few slides. Membership. Membership of the clubs is at capacity. Bald Head Island Club, we have 1,313 member families. There are 350 full member, those are golf members. 83 are on the wait list for that level of membership. At the current rate, that's about an 11-year wait list for member 83 on the list. Add-on memberships have been capped at both clubs. Shoals Club membership is also capped. We have 850 primary members of the Shoals Club and about 12 on the wait list to get membership for the Shoals Club. A little bit deeper dive, all of that membership activity accounts for about 5,000 people that consider themselves to be primary members of the Bald Head Island Club. Club financially is in very good shape. A reminder that the club is a not-for-profit entity. So any extra cash that's produced at either club at the end of the year goes back into the club with capital improvements or reduces debt service or set aside for hurricane contingency. Golf continues to grow. This past year was the 2nd highest year golf rounds at the Bald Head Island. We did almost 28,000 rounds of golf. The only prior year that was higher was the COVID year, which was exceptionally busy at the club. We did open our temporary golf shop this past week in a new golf instruction building. So if you're at the club, members don't have to check in. You can just use the traditional bag drop. And if you want to go and make a tee time, talk to the golf professionals, buy anything, please head over to the new golf instruction. Tennis, we have a new tennis check-in shop that's going to be opening up in 2 months. And tennis continues to grow at the club. Pickleball, we just added 6 new pickleball courts. We're very proud of how they turned out. They're officially going to open next month. However, we are having members come over and start to play at the new pickleball facilities. We have a new pickleball croquet shade pavilion that's going to start construction in a couple months. Croquet continued to grow. We went from 5 weeks of professional croquet coverage up to 7 months. And this year, we're going to actually have 8 months of croquet professionals on staff. They happen to be national champions. It's a phenomenally talented group. This past year, we had 80,000 swimmers at the Bald Head Island Club Aquatics Complex. Food and beverage continues to grow. This past year, we had 10% higher revenues than the year before. Member satisfaction survey scores are up 22%. This coming week, we begin construction on the new coffee bean bar. So that entire operation will be completed in the next 2 months. Shoals Club remains open on weekends all winter, which has been very popular with an international passport series. The opera renovation just got completed this past year, and we installed artwork a few weeks ago. It looks phenomenal. Latitudes updates are underway. We were renovating it this past week. The Sandbar Grill is being updated to speed up service, and we are working on a major sandbag revetment project there. Staff recruitment, we brought in 134 new hires at both clubs. Year-to-date turnover was down to 16.9%. We currently have 259 employees between the 2 clubs. This past year, we accomplished quite a bit. Just a couple of highlights. The golf practice area renovation was a huge project for the club. Pickleball is completed. Horizon sound mitigation and lighting was all improved. This coming year, the fitness renovation started 2 weeks ago. So the old fitness center is currently being demolished. We moved the temporary fitness center into the back end of the ocean room and the green room, so we are offering fitness services every single day. That will be in there probably until the end of May or beginning of June, when the new center will open. The new center will provide 4 times the space that the old fitness center had. We do have a new parking area and entrance road that's under construction this spring. 2 new croquet greenswords that are under construction. We're making plans for the new golf house. This is a site of the plan that we had this past fall. There have been a couple tweaks to this plan that we made in conjunction with the BHA. And then just a quick note on the beach renourishment. Mayor Quinn talked about it at the beginning of his presentation. We asked that all BHI registered voters consider supporting the Go Bond referendums. BHI has had over 21 years of success with engineered solutions to beach renourishment. Over the years, if you look at this slide in 2008 versus the slide in 2023, because of the work of the club with this community, the village, and government agencies, the whole west end of South Beach has been stable, has healthy dunes, infrastructure has been protected, homes, roads, and the club, the Bulkhead Island Club has been protected. Years ago, back in 2004, the club was actually seeing ocean water coming up across South Bulkhead line. The dune wasn't there, homes had water flowing underneath. The island formed together to form an engineered solution, and that has protected that entire part of the island. So now we're asking for help in protecting the final last mile of South Beach. It has 37 homes and lots, and the Shoals Club has 8% of that last mile. So it's not just a Shoals Club issue, but the Shoals Club is very much interested in helping to be part of the solution for this. So here's just a few quick notes about, for those who are registered to vote on the island, what you can do to help and what our timeline is. For those that might be island residents or interested in registering to vote, there are resources on the village website and on the club website, and we have information for everyone to be able to register and consider absentee voting. We thank you for your time today. And speaking of voting, I know that there's some business of the BHA. Turn the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our presenters. Please join me in a round of applause for them all again. If there are any questions or comments from the audience, we invite those at this time. If you are joining us remotely, please click on the raise hand in the chat to ask a question, and we'll call on you. When you hear your name, you'll be asked to unmute yourself and speak. If you're here in person with us, please come up to the podium to speak. For those who are connecting remotely can hear you. In either case, please tell us your name and BHI address before you speak. Now we will take questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Come on up. Now is the time. Is that a? Got it. We reserved 2 hours for this segment. Okay. Going once, going twice.
And at this time, Alan, there are no questions or hands raised for questions online.
Good. Next, we get the election result. You'll receive the seal from the vote during the meeting. Just the seal. For the final voting results for the 2024 Board of Directors, Betty Robinson and Steve Smalley are elected.
Alan, we can't hear you back here.
Oh, for it's the 2024 Board of Directors, Elizabeth Betty Robinson and Steve Smalley have been elected. for amendments for the declaration of covenants, constitutions, and restrictions approved. They are approved, and the amendments for the Bald Head Association bylaws, they are approved. Thanks to all of the candidates, Betty, Steve, Bob Geiger, Michael Dunbar, and Chris Perry. We appreciate it. Now we have the slide 107, 108 for recognition of people that are getting kicked off the board.
Thank you, Alan.
Alan and Robert came to Bald Head Association as a result of a merger from the former Stage Two Association. The two of them simultaneously raised their hands to join the board of this newly merged organization in 2018, bringing their decades of experience in law and finance with them. It was a lot of hard work. They have spent untold hours helping create the strong, viable Bald Head Association that we have today.
Photo op, okay.
Get them.
Okay. For those who may not know much about southern live oaks, they're a keystone species that serve as the backbone of its ecosystem. They're a critical part of Bald Head Island's structure. Their root systems help to hold the sand together, and their shade allows the understory to grow and produce habitat for hundreds of living organisms, including mammals, birds, insects, and other plants. Live oaks were used in colonial times by the Navy for shipbuilding, and for centuries they have been considered a symbol of safety, strength, and resilience. So in the early spring, we're going to plant live oak trees on BHA common area for each of you in recognition of your strength, your character, and your commitment to the sustainability of Bald Head Island. Thank you both. Nice opportunity. Beautiful.
We have at this point in time, we have one more opportunity you have for us to read the minutes of the last meeting. Short of that, we are. We're going to adjourn. Please feel free to continue your conversations outside as the board has an organizational meeting to get started working on behalf of our members. Before we adjourn, I'd also like to thank the members of our board, directors for their service and acknowledge the installation of our 2024 board of directors, Christine, John Kenny, John Vaughn, Paul Carey, two newest just elected a moment ago. Thank you very much, and we are adjourned.
We do. Oh, get it right and open it.
I didn't open my own.
I thought they were gonna move us, but now it sounds like they might keep us here, so.
Oh, yeah.